to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about two stories today. Yep, we're going to be talking about the Diary of River Song audio drama, The Web of Time, written by John Dory, and we're going to be talking about the second Doctor TV story, The Web of Fear, written by Marvin Halesman and Henry Lincoln, directed by Douglas Camfield. With the CDs, I always make a DVD cover to go with it, and this is my cover. The Doctor doesn't actually appear in this, so what I've done is I've put the TARDIS symbol on there instead, and you've got this cool thing I've designed. So if you're interested in... Is that the right way up? Yeah, that's the right way up. If you're interested in that, you know, that's really cool. So I decided to do it like this for a change because of one main reason. With the other stories in the Diary of River Song stories, though they are connected, like the last one we did was The Unearthly Woman, which was a prequel to An Unearthly Child. And though it is a prequel to that story, that one felt more self-contained. It had its own villain. The plot of River didn't really connect all too well with that story. It was just the settings and some of the characters, and it just so happened to be set before. However, with this story, it does generally feel like it's a missing episode 0 of The Web of Fear. So I've decided to put the videos together. And it also doesn't help as well that the Diary of River Song story doesn't actually have the Doctor in it. But there you go. So we're talking about these two stories. The Web of Time sees River Song looking for one famous painting in the future, which is one of a set of 6, and that painting has gone missing in time, which is a slight reference to The Web of Fear, which is a 6-part story, and one episode is missing, episode 3. So there's a very nice, sweet little nod to that. However, the painting just so happens to be in the London Underground during the attack by the Yetis. And so, it will be River Song meeting the Great Intelligence, which way later down in the story, you'd kind of have another meeting with him. But this is like the first one where you'd meet the real Great Intelligence. We'll get into that in a bit. But here she gets introduced to Captain Knight, a character that does appear in The Web of Fear. And she knows that something is going to happen to him. And so the story is mainly them two, and River basically teams up with Knight. And she's sort of like a very mysterious character here. It does play to the strength that we don't really know River that well. And so her morality is really put into question here as she saves Knight, but she says it was only because that she knows that he must survive to see the Web of Fear and help the Doctor. And when it comes to other people, she's a lot more grey. She does try and save the rest of his crew members at the start of the story, but fails and leaves them basically to their fates to get killed by an avalanche in the underground by a Yeti attack. And she basically explains that she had to let them die because she doesn't know them in history. And so there you go. And it's also as well, they also befriend a girl that they meet in the underground who's stolen River's vortex manipulator. And River says as well that she basically has to die either now or later, as she knows only one woman actually survived the events of the Yeti, as she's been looking at the records, and this girl is nowhere to be seen in the records, and so she is planning to just let her die. And Knight is basically like, no, how can you let her die just because what? Just time traveling thing you're on about? So it's a lot like the Aztecs in that sense, where we have a story basically about altering time and that you can't really change it and you've got a thing. So, and it's very interesting to see River, who is a much more mysterious character than the Doctor, at least in our point of chronologically listening to these stories. As here, we don't know anything about her. She does actually mention that the Doctor is her husband, so that's one mystery that was ruined. Hooray! That's less of a nitpick and more just something I really hope they wouldn't do. And I don't know. Oh well. But yeah, so you do have this very complex dynamic, and I was so close to absolutely adoring this story. But I only kind of like it, and the reason for that is probably a biggie in my opinion. It basically does the same thing as the Aztecs, like I said. It deals with time travel and aspects of it. However, the difference is that this story is just under an hour long, just under an hour, say, and it does touch upon them, but it kind of just brushes them apart. It's a big part of the story, but there's no real in-depth look at the problems that it arrives, and so it's kind of disappointing in my opinion for that. It's still a great story. I mean, I really love that the Great Intelligence is in here, and he does it it's very well written, and he's very well performed. And you've got the Yetis, and you know, they're being Yeti and stuff. I didn't really get the whole Yeti thing. And in audio forms, you don't have that menacing look that they have in the Web of Fear. The hell was that? Anyway, so, you know, it does kind of hinder it on the fact that it's an audio drama for this particular, the robots. The Great Intelligence, I think, could have easily worked in audio form. It's just the Yetis themselves. So, yeah, I think John Dory did a very great job here. Very strong story in the River Song Diaries. Oh, this is the second story in Volume 6, if anyone's wondering, which is all about prequels to Doctor Who's the main series stories, the prequels to some of the early Doctor Who stories. So there you go. But I think the short run time really hinders this, and it makes it not as exciting, in my opinion, to what it should be, where it could have gone in depth. It felt really New Who. Do you know, like you watch like an episode of New Who and you're like, right, it's a great story, but I wish it was a two-parter. I kind of feel like this as well, and it does kind of feel like it is part one of a bigger story, like we will get into. So, you know, the guy who plays Knight from the Web of Fear comes back to play him in here, and you can clearly hear his voice is aged, but he does a fantastic job, and I really like Knight's character here. What else to say? John Dory. This is the first, I believe. I can't remember if he did any first Doctor stories that we've tackled. However, we have actually heard his voice before, because he actually appears as Alexander the Great, and he appears as the robot one. I can't remember his name. The Ancient One, the Perfect One, something like that, in the Lost Story box set of the first Doctor. So we've seen him as an actor. This is his first time as a writer that we've heard, I think. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, that's the Web of Time. It's good, but it could have been a lot better, in my opinion. There you go. There you go. And now tackling. There you go. And now tackling the Web of Fear. Now, for those of you who don't know, this story was actually lost for a long time in the BBC archive, with only one episode remaining. And it was one of those stories that everybody wanted back. Everybody loved the atmosphere and the audio that survived of it. And I remember one of my distinct memories about watching a show younger is hearing about these lost stories. And me and my uncle I remember we talked about a lot how much we would have loved to see this one, and especially how the music is very, and the atmosphere is a very like old-fashioned horror films, which we were a huge fan of. So this was one we really wanted to see, And then luckily in 2013, all but one episode was found in the BBC archives, and they released it on DVD, sorry. Hooray! Episode 3 is missing of this 6-part story, and here they've decided to do a telesnap, a tele-reconstruction, like Loose Cannon did. It's not as bad. It's actually a pretty decent telesnap. I think maybe that could be because there was only one episode, whilst like in The Underwater Menace it was 2, and they really didn't give a dumb ass about that one. But here the telesnap actually does fit really well. So here we have, we're not going to talk about the story in depth, we're just going to talk about it briefly, not briefly, we're going to talk about it like vaguely. So the Doctor, Jamie and Victoria, they go into the London Underground during the attack. Now we don't actually know when the story is set. We actually meet Travis, who was in The Abominable Snowmen, and he said it was 30 years after that. And I believe that was set in 1935. I think in the story they mention it's in 1935. So that means the story is set in 1965. However, there's this whole the unit controversy. I won't talk about it here, but if you want to look it up. You know, there's a lot about it on the internet, so you can look it up yourself. And so it's revealed already there that the Yetis are already there attacking people in the London Underground, and there's this giant like mist, a web that's going out throughout the London Underground. And so this was probably a great story to have a prequel story, which we had with the Diary of River Songs. But there you go. So the story, as soon as the Doctor's in the situation, the adventure already has begun, which becomes a sort of cliche later down in the series, which it really does help set the story up very well, how all the situations are basically in place and how TARDIS crew are already there. And so we get the Yetis, and we get this very atmospheric story where I can't imagine this story without its visuals now that I've watched it. It's very gloomy, it's very dark. Here's a fun fact. When they didn't actually get permission to film in the London Underground. So they built a London Underground set, and it was so good that the Underground Service community people actually sent a letter of complaint to the BBC saying that they've been using their train stations without their permission, and they were going to have to pay a fee until it was explained actually this was a set that we made. And there's actually a few theories that suggest that they were lying and they did actually film on the Underground without their permission or knowledge. So that's really funny. But yeah, it does really rely on this really small set. So you constantly go back and forth between this very small set. But I think that really works to the atmosphere of the story. A lot of old B-movie horror films would shoot themselves in like loads of short, small sets, and it's less to do with like showing off the sets and stuff, which this story does, but it's more getting the shots of the characters and the atmosphere and the dark gloominess, which kind of hides the fact of how cheap it looks. But this story does a fantastic job at emphasizing that horror. It feels a lot like a horror film from the 1960s, where you had those blockbuster monster movies, and the Yetis are some of the great monsters. They're very cuddly looking. Here they've kind of had a slight redesign, and even though it's a small redesign, it makes a huge difference. What they've done is that they've made the head slightly longer, and they've given these big glowing like owl eyes. So it's got like a kind of like an owl face. You can see on the cover then. And for some reason, despite it only being a little change from The Abominable Snowman, it really brings out a haunting atmosphere, like an owl that just constantly looks, staring at you, constantly. And so, in episode 3, which is the missing episode, we actually get introduced to a famous Doctor Who character. In this story, he is Colonel Lethbridge Stewart, but later on he will become the Brigadier, and he would become a huge part in the series, especially in the third Doctor era, and this is his first outing. Here, played by Nicholas Courtney, he does a fantastic job, and you can really see why people gravitated towards his character. He really gives commands soon as, and he really picks up the story. A lot of general type of characters, like these general captains, colonel characters during his time in Doctor Who would always have like a complex situation. Before they can even like attack or do anything, they would have like a debate with themselves, which is great. It's a great story dynamic to tackle and stuff. However, Colonel Lethbridge Stewart is someone who would attack first, ask questions later. And it really works to the story's strengths. Like, as if, like, the Yetis cannot be stopped, despite how quick our characters can try to react. And later on, there's this small subplot of, we don't know, so anybody can be controlled by the great intelligence, which is this disembodied voice. And nobody knows who's working for it. And so everybody's like, kind of like, who's working for who? And at one point they expect that the Colonel is part of it. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he might be, because he kind of believes that they're time travelers in his police box really quick, which I found really strange now knowing that, spoiler alert, it wasn't him. It's very bizarre how he kind of just straight away believes them, as the Doctor tells everything and that. His first question is, could the TARDIS take us all away? And the Doctor's like, yes. And so his big mission is to get the TARDIS, which I kind of guess shows his loyalty to the Doctor, which is kind of funny because later on it would become like a huge aspect that he rarely believes what the Doctor is saying, especially with the third Doctor. But he's a lot more serious and straight-faced here, not like a comedy foil for some of the Doctor's antics. So they do play a lot onto the same level. And there's a great scene in which he goes above the London Underground as the city's deserted, and he thinks, right, I can basically cheat myself and like go up onto the streets and come back down onto the London Underground to a more secure spot. However, him and his crew get annihilated by the Yetis in a very pseudo-unit scene in which the team just get annihilated. For some reason, using the music from Tomb of the Cybermen, where they come out, which I found really bizarre. It must have been some stock music. I don't know. A lot of music in this story is stock music. I don't know if all of it is, but a lot of it is, especially the start where you see the Yeti kill for the first time. They've taken it right off as like an old-fashioned horror film, and it really gets into the atmosphere. Now, the story does a lot of what a lot of 60s stories in the second Doctor era do, in which the last episode kind of feels like a completely different episode, where we have the Doctor and his crew go from this London Underground to like a secret base, to where the Great Intelligence is working, and it's like this really bright white room, and it's very scientific. And I don't know, I don't think it really works that well here. Story-wise, it makes sense, and you know, stories just oppose themselves like this, changing its genre all the time. It's nothing new. But as somebody who is really enjoying the haunting atmosphere, it was kind of a bummer to go from that to like a typically sci-fi kind of view. Though it still keeps a little bit of horror as we discover one of the characters, who I will not name, was actually controlled by the Great Intelligence. It's not very clear if he was controlled from the beginning. I think they were trying to imply that, or whether he got controlled later on when this character disappears at one point. So I don't know, but him being basically a zombie, having the Great Intelligence speak from his body is a very great moment. And oh yeah, Captain Knight in this is a background character at most. He gets a few scenes at the start, but then when Colonel Lethbridge Stewart comes into it, he gets really undermined really quick, and he soon gets annihilated in a great scene by the Yetis, in which the Doctor and him go up onto the surface to try and get some scientific equipment from a shop. And so they're in like a very small like corner shop, and two Yetis come in. And the Doctor's and they're absolutely helpless against these things, as the Yeti just annihilate them. And there's a great moment where the Doctor, with his bare hands, just smashes at the back of the Yeti, and it does absolutely nothing. So it really sets the Yetis as a very formidable foe. Now, and a slight complaint I have is that the story is a little bit too long. I think it's paced very well, but there was only so much you can do with this atmosphere and this tension that it builds. And a lot of moments, there are some quirky moments that I think could have easily been cut out, like this news reporter character and this whole dealings with the Doctor might be a part of the Yeti invasion. I think they could have been easily cut out, but I don't think I would have cut it enough to warrant removing an episode. But it's still a very worthwhile story. So there you go. That's the Web of Fear and the Web of Time. Let me put it like that. Is it? There you go. So highly recommend both these stories. The Web of Time is okay. And the Web of Fear I think is really great. It might not be for everyone, but I personally really enjoyed it. So there you go. Go and huge recommendations. So join me next time where we say goodbye to Vicky and we get introduced to one of the greatest devices in sci-fi history, the sonic screwdriver. So join me next time where we go into the fury of the deep. So join me next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. See you then.